So now that the playthrough is over, that means we get to go to we get to move on to the review. I mean, there's a lot to go through. This game was actually quite long because we decided to do all the side quests and learn more about the characters. So late night straight right after. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I don't know about that, but we shall see. Anyway, so normally after a playthrough, I usually try to do a review and I want trails or okay, anyway, I will talk about those after we're done with the review here. So generally, like if you guys have been watching a playthrough, and if you haven't, after we beat a game, I usually go ahead and do a review. Sometimes it's not quick, but it's when the game is freshest in my mind and right after an ending. So we'll go ahead and get into it. So usually, because of the type of games we play, I usually have it split up between story, graphics, music, and gameplay, which usually includes controls. And yeah, so like that's generally how it goes. I know, because we play mostly story-based games. So I guess first we'll start off with the story of the game. So obviously with this game you have to have played Shadow Hearts 1 or else you're not going to understand a lot of things or why certain moments are significant. And that's not a ding against the game because it's fine for a sequel. Obviously expecting you to have played the prequel would make sense, right? So I'm not going to say anything about like how you wouldn't know some of this stuff if you hadn't played Shadow Hearts 1. And okay, well, I'm getting into this like interesting thing where I'm not really I feel like the story is a little bit slow at the beginning, and then like once we start getting to Russia, it's actually kind of where things start taking off and more interesting things are happening. I do like the fact that like there is some integration of history, which is actually kind of neat. And like, of course, like I've kind of been. It just happens that I was like trying to follow World War I, so I knew some of this stuff, particularly Russian history as well. Let's see. So I was mentioning it earlier. I guess the only thing is like, I'm not sure in terms of like story presentation whether this game is actually that great at it. I feel like, okay, like I'll talk about the voice acting in the later section, which is about music and sound, but the animation, like one thing that the game's upgraded is like the animated cutscenes compared to like Shadow Hearts 1 where there is a lot less of that. I don't know. I just don't feel like they're really all that well directed. Like some of these early ones to mid ones, I feel like it starts getting better like once you get to it was like the latter half of the game's animated cutscenes were better than the earlier ones. And I don't know, I feel like it kind of hampers the story a bit. It makes it feel like, oh, why is it so awkward and slow? And like I was kind of like expecting better, and like in some cases like Shadow Hearts 1 was actually quite good of like presenting something like some really interesting cutscenes. Like there was like the story of the ghost story, or there was a lot of talk about like Qiuhua, or like just see things. I remember that stuff. Like it was just, they were like artistic and interesting. Whereas in this game, they're sort of like you suddenly have to see the model, like the stiff in-game models, or they're not stiff, or sometimes they're stiffly animated, and it just like, oh, are we dragging out this scene? I mean, it's supposed to be a dramatic scene, and it's just like, it could have gone a little faster there. Let's see. And I guess like one thing is that, okay, this is kind of subjective, but I feel like I don't know if a cast is that well integrated into the story. Like with Shadow Hearts 1, like it felt like there was a lot of involvement. You had a different, like I'm going to make it really quick without going in deep into Shadow Hearts 1. Like you had Zhu Zhen, and you had a lot who has a lot of significance in the plot, where because he's like introducing you to things. Oh, Zhu Zhen's pronunciation of her name. Oh yeah, I know. That was like let's not talk about like the Chinese pronunciation. That's for a different section. I felt like the cast from Shadow Hearts 1 did better. They was a better job of like integrating them into the story. The problem with this one is just basically like Yuri is the main character, and like kind of like nobody, like you meet the party member, but they're not really all that significant to moving the plot along, except maybe Anastasia and I guess Kurando in some sense, but even then, like, because ultimately it all comes back to Yuri, where he's kind of the domineering force of the game. Like everything's related to him, really. Like, and Karen kind of like isn't really that involved until much, I guess. Is she? Like, she didn't really do much. I mean, she does like in the game. Like there's stuff that she can do, but like. Yeah, the characterization of Karen is just kind of all over the place, which it's kind of weird. Her battle quotes are like she's supposed to be sassy, but she's more commandeer. I don't know, and she doesn't strike me as like a commander type. She's kind of like she kind of acts like a rookie at some point. So it's just like it's kind of her, like her characterization's all over the place. I mean, she does come to fall in love with Yuri, which is also kind of weird. She's his mom. I know, I'm still like, what? That is really, really strange. But, yeah, I feel like her characterization is probably one of the weaker parts of the game. Which is unfortunate because, like, she should be an important character, but she doesn't really move the plot along all that much. And her love thing is, like, kind of like, it's hard to feel. I don't feel anything at the confession. I'm just like, oh, okay, I guess she's in love with him. Sure, that's kind of neat, I guess. And like, yeah, some people were also pointing out that like she clearly knows that Yuri is not in love with her, and yet she still confessed. And I guess I kind of understand why she did it, but it's sort of like, you know that he doesn't return the feelings. So what's kind of like, you know that and you're still gonna say it? Well, I guess if you had to say it, sure. But you know he can't return those feelings either. And so like, she's kind of, her characterization's kind of all over the place, where her battle quotes don't match her character. Like she's more, she's not that sassy in game, except in battle scenes. Well, it's a weird thing. Let's see. And yeah, like, you only get to really know more about the characters when you do their character side stories. Whereas, like, in Shadow Hearts, like, you had to learn about, like, what had happened. If I can't have him, I'll be his mom instead. Oh, gosh. The worst part is that that's pretty much true. And yeah, he's way into love with Alice. I mean, that's the woman he loves. I mean, that's not in Shadow Hearts 1, they established it very, very, very clearly. So he was not going to return her feelings. Anyway, I'm just gonna say, like, yeah, I feel like the characters, like, you don't get to know them unless you do the side quests, and it's just like, oh, why save that for those times? Like, why didn't you integrate it as part of the story? Like, we wouldn't have known anything about Geppetto's daughter if I hadn't done the side quest. And yet, like, in the previous game, like Zhu Zhen feels... I'm just remembering the characters from Shadow Hearts 1, like, how much they had more to do with the plot. Yeah, that's just how I feel about it. Like, Marguerite and, Keith is kind of like, okay, he's kind of weird, but I like Keith. I mean, I like his brother, too, but, you know. Joachim, yeah. Like, Joachim didn't really get to... Yeah, like his personal stuff doesn't really get involved with the plot. You have to do that separately. So everything's all separate. It's just like, it's really like, okay, the main character is the only one that matters to the story, honestly. Like, which is kind of, so it's like kind of a misnomer. Even the North American box art is kind of misleading too, because it's like, oh, Karen's gonna be really important, but she's really not that important until much later, and now we know why she's important, or why people were like, oh, you look like Yuri's mom. That's kind of weird. Joachim is the true hero of the game. Well, he is a true hero after all. I do like Joachim, so and I guess Anastasia is involved for a very short time, but it's like, yeah, it's really one-off. So yeah, I'm not sure how I liked how the characters were really integrated in the game. I'm really hoping that From the New World will be a bit better about that. Because like I'm not even sure if the writing's, so that's why I'm like, I'm not really sure like if this game's writing is as good as the previous one. And I really like the previous game too. I mean, for all its faults, I still really like the story and like the feeling of, excuse me, the horror atmosphere. I feel like this game is like, I mean, they're kind of shifting away from horror. So like they're kind of away from Kudelka and Shadow Hearts 1, which had this feeling of dread. But it was like, it was somehow really compelling. And like this game is like, this is kind of softballing. And then like, I guess, I mean, I felt the most for Kato as well, like having to witness how many, I mean, like, oh my goodness, this game just kicked Kato essentially. And I'm not even sure, like, can buy the fact that, like, Kato like, I understand that when you love someone that much and to lose them, it can devastate you, but I've never seen Kato as, like, I guess they try to explain it where it's, like, he's not destructive, he's just trying to go back to a point in time earlier. And I guess they're like, well, you shouldn't be able to do that unilaterally. That's not... But that's about it, really. I don't know. I don't know if Kato would just risk the world just to do that. That's just... But, I mean, who knows? I mean, love makes you do weird things. I guess you can explain it that way. Anyway, what was I going to say again? So, yeah, I feel like it's not quite, and like I do agree that the story in 1 is really good, so that's why I don't feel like it's quite as good this time around, like in terms of like a tightly written story. I'm glad they included a side quest so you actually could get to know a bit more about the other characters, except maybe Lucia, who remains. Kawashima would kick his ass for yeah, she probably would. I mean, love makes people do stupid things, so you know what? I'm maybe like, it's fine. I don't also feel like, yeah, that's another thing. They don't really explain how Kato got so powerful. Like, we're never really given an idea of how he went from a civilian to someone who was actually able to stand toe to toe with Yuri, who has like, who's been a combat type the whole time. Like, that's just a little weird. I don't understand that either. I think, like, the more compelling parts are, like, yeah, it's basically everything that... It's just, like, all the parts with Yuri and, like, Kato are, like, very compelling, and then the rest is, like, I don't know. I guess, like, the characters are... It's cool I have a new character, but they don't really involve the plot, I guess. I know, right? It's like some kind of demon trait. I'm just like, where did you get this power, Kato? Why don't they explain it very well in the game? They don't. What else is there to say about the game? I mean, the ending is just like, I do like it. At first, like, I was like, man, the ending is so sad. They're both sad. That's typical of this series. I do like that there's a little bit of hope on the good one, and I'm actually glad that it is the canon. So it does make me happy that the endings I earned in Shadow Hearts 1 are not to waste. Because, gosh darn it, that stupid guy... I did not fight that stupid guy in Shadow Hearts 1 for nothing to save Alice. I mean, yeah, he got interested in cult, but they don't really explain how he got that power. Because that's one thing, but like learning to control it. Oh well. Anyway, they could have just like done a bit more of like. Because that's another thing. Because like even Shadowheart, like in Kudelka, they really did a good job of like playing up like how the character became. Went like not the main character Kudelka, but the owner of the mansion went completely mad with trying to be able to resurrect Elaine, and then yeah, it was actually really like reading that gave me chills. Like that's the kind of stuff I was expecting, but they kind of don't. They kind of hand wave it like, yeah, he got involved in a cult, and now look, he's so powerful. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, wouldn't some if you got involved in the cult with no prior training, wouldn't you be very likely to be consumed by it very quickly and lose your sanity instead of remaining who you are? I don't know. That's just me. I don't know. I feel like it was hand waved. Anything else I want to say? Oh, they watered the horror even more. I mean, if the story is good, at least that makes up for it. But I mean, like I know that they've kind of like I know the second and third game, like both Covenant and From the New World, are not really all that scary or horrific as it used to be. I mean, that's okay, but like you need to have a tight story still, regardless if you're not scaring the crap out of me. I guess that's pretty much all I can think of. I'm struggling to think. I think that yeah, the story presentation could have been better, and there's some things about it that are kind of like, and we're never like, yeah, there's some the character integration needed work too. So, but I mean, ultimately, it was still enjoyable. I did enjoy playing through it. And I liked that they were playing of like, well, Yuri, like, what are you going to do? Your soul, like, are you going to give up? Because your soul is going to be confused. Like that stuff is good. That was like, I didn't really like that as well. So I'm criticizing, but I'm not like, oh my goodness, this story is horrible or something like that. So I still did enjoy it ultimately. So that's good, right? Anyway, next up is I think we can move on to graphics. So okay, look, guys, it would be stupid for me to say like, well, this doesn't look as good as modern. So like, typically, I usually try to compare for the time period. Okay, the animations are a little stiff. They are trying to use mocap, so it did help a lot to make. Like, I always felt that like mocap really helps to. Properly done really helps to make the characters seem better. Not better, like seem more alive, because the movement's more realistic. So I'm glad they started incorporating mocap compared to like some of the like wonkier animations from Shadow Hearts 1, especially Yuri's running animation. It's very weird. So I can happy to say that they've definitely improved in that sense for the in-game part. And like for this time, it looks like a PlayStation 2 game. Like, I don't think it's particularly bad. It's quite good for the time. And I know that they don't have the budget of like, I mean, at this point in time, I think Final Fantasy X was out. So of course, like, yeah, it's not gonna look as nice as those. But like, look, they have a lower budget, so I understand. And it still looks pretty good. I like that they try to make the locales interesting looking, and even the dungeons are like, I'm trying to think, like, there's still a good variety in dungeons. There are some ones that are like, oh, it's just dark, but like at least like they try to provide interesting locales around the world, so that's really cool. And so I don't honestly have a lot to bad things to say. Like, the models look fine. They look like of course clearly they've aged, but because it's from 2004, but it still looks pretty nice for the era. The CG is alright, I suppose. The CG is aight. It's not my like it's not terrible. It is like better than PlayStation 1 quality, and certainly better than like some of the previous games as well. And like, yeah, I mean it looks fine. Let's see, anything else I wanted to say? So I do think that sometimes they, like, I'm trying to think of like how to describe it. Like sometimes like it's a little hard to see what's interactable. One thing I was like noticing in the final dungeon is like, huh, I want to walk over there. Oh, there is something blocking. It's not very clear that it's blocking me, but it's there. So I feel like there are some times where like I can't. It's kind of a pitfall of like a lot of these games where like I'm gonna create an environment that's kind of weird and creepy and dark. Oh, I've made it so that the player can't really tell where they're walking. Okay. And yeah, that happens where it's sometimes like I can't really tell where I'm walking. I feel like, I mean, later in more modern games, they've certainly like gotten better about that, about making like clear indicators for the player to like see. I think like, okay, for instance, Uncharted does a pretty good job of that too. And despite being in a more realistic world, they do a really pretty good job of like showing you where you can interact or walk. And I feel like this game, like there's sometimes where like, I can't really go through here. Oh, okay, I guess I'm being blocked by something. And I guess like I can kind of talk about like the camera angles are kind of a pain to deal with. They try to have this dynamic camera angle, and sometimes it's like it's just jarring. When it changes, so you're like, oh, am I walking the wrong way? And I got used to it, but it's still like I would have preferred like the a fully controllable camera, or I wish it didn't snap so much, so it's like kind of like abrupt. So when you get close to somewhere and sometimes you move from one room to another, it's just like it snaps. You're like, oh, whoa, it snapped again. So like it throws you off, and it was kind of bothering me throughout the game. And like I didn't complain about it too much because I figured it would get really annoying. But like, oh, it changed again, because like it was just changing nonstop. But it was kind of annoying, kind of rough, and like almost feel like, I mean, that's kind of like a carryover for some PlayStation 1 games as well. So they kind of kept with that, because like, okay guys, like disclosure, like as a programmer I can tell you that making dynamic camera angles is like fully controllable camera angles is really hard. And like there would have been so much more testing needed to make sure you didn't like end up in a bad spot. But I mean, you do the work for it, and it does reward the player if you do it right. So yeah, it's just one thing where like the camera angles like flipping was like kind of jarring, and it really throws me off too. But other than that, like I think for the most part, at least, I didn't have too much trouble with some of those dungeons, seeing stuff in the dungeons. So that's pretty good. So I'm actually pretty happy with like how the game looks. At least they got the environments right. So thank you programmers, for doing a good job. Alright, so now this brings me to sound and music. And okay, let's get this out of the way. This game needs more town themes. I've talked about it this entire stream, and yeah, it's really like it's really crazy that the entirety of Europe has all the same town theme, and it gets old. It's like this really like ambient track. Like it's a really nice track, but it doesn't fit everywhere. And it's like the previous game did a better job of like giving each town like flavor with different music. So it's like, why did they I know, right? Why did they cheapen out on this? They clearly had talented composers. I mean, Yasunori Mitsuda was there. Like how do you not use the resource? I mean, I guess they couldn't pay for it, but like the game just like suffers for it. And even the the dungeons have a little more variety, but like yeah, some of the dungeon music gets repeated and it's just like, okay. It's the same one again. And like, why would you cheapen out on music? And I mean, I'm kind of glad that the only villages that have different themes are the Japanese ones. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, I guess they put all the musical budget in Japan rather than actually taking the opportunity to like vary like Europe, so you wouldn't have the exact same music all the time in everywhere, despite being in such different countries, and like adding like flavor. So like you couldn't even tell the difference between being in being in England versus France, which are or Italy, which are three different countries with very different cultures. So it's what a wasted opportunity, and like I think it hurts the game a lot too. And it's kind of like, why would you do that? Or why would you think that was acceptable? And like it's like a step down from the previous game. It's like, why? Anyway, let me think. Speaking of music and sound, like otherwise, like there are like during the cutscenes they have some really great compositions, so I'm actually really happy about that. And some of those ones are actually really beautiful. Like definitely, like the soundtrack is going to be worth going through. And now this, what I'm going to talk about now is just speaking of sound and music, I can include voice acting finally. I think like. Yeah, this is going to sound harsh, but I don't know if I think the voice act. This is a complaint specific to the English version. Obviously, I've not played the Japanese version, so I cannot judge the quality of the voice work in the Japanese version. I mean, I'm assuming it should be better. Okay, that's a subjective, but like, it should. By virtue of it not being a dub, it probably sounds a bit better because they customized the game to fit the Japanese voice timings. And in this game, because they couldn't fit the video to the English voice timing, you get this really awkward delivery. I actually think that, I don't know what they did with the direction for Yuri. I think there were just some moments it was just comical. Like these moments should be dramatic and exciting and like, or like gut wrenching, and then the delivery just makes it so I start laughing, and that's like, no. I know, like that bite me. I'm like, wow, how did you? I'm sorry. I like the voice actors themselves, and like they have really great bodies. They have a lot of like body of work that's like great. So it's not the problem with the talent of the English voice actors. It's just, I don't know what was the direction, or like they just could not overcome the technical obstacle, which is like timing yourself with the like the movies. And it's just, like, because the delivery just like ruins some of the scenes, and like it just because it's kind of stilted, so it just emphasizes like how stilted some of those like animated cutscenes were, which I remember I was talking about earlier. So it just contributes to a feeling of the game feeling slow and awkward, and that's not what you want. They all have great bodies of work, and yes, they also have great bodies too, I'm sure. Anyway. But yeah, like, it's a step down from the previous game. Like, the previous game, like, I don't know what, like, the direction was better. And the thing is, like, they even, like, put a lot of effort into trying to give, like, unique accents for the characters, which makes sense because we're in a worldwide, this game is a worldwide, cast, and, like, you should take advantage of it because, like, we know we have at least documented like by virtue of it being English, there's a lot excuse me, people that that have accents when they speak English, so you could have taken advantage of it. So like, yeah, I mean, one of the things that bum me out are like they removed the accent from Alice. She clearly had a Welsh accent from the last game, and now she has like an American accent, which is like, what? The continuity is just like ruined too. I mean, remember, this is all English specific, so I can't judge the Japanese one side. And like Joachim like doesn't, yeah, I know it doesn't have the accent Keith had. And like the only French accents are, I guess, from Pierre, sorta, for a short time. So like that was kind of neat, but then like they don't give any accents for anybody else. I mean, I don't know. It's just really like, what a shame indeed. Like you could have made it interesting, but they did not. So I mean, you don't even need a really thick Russian accent. You can just talk like an ordinary Russian today, and it would have been fine. Oh well, I mean, like, yeah, I feel like that's just kind of a misstep, and like just like the vocal direction was just, it just wasn't very good for mostly Yuri, and that's really bad because Yuri's the main character. Yeah, there's just so many like these missteps that kind of like hold it back. I'm gonna complain about the pronunciation of Chinese names, but I understand that they probably didn't have a guide for how to pronounce the Chinese names, but they had a better guide who can pronounce the Japanese names. So for the most part, the Japanese pronunciation is actually alright. I mean, like, it's still not a native pronunciation, but I mean, at least it's not completely cringe. It's not making me cringe, so that's always good. Because I mean, I know how it's pronounced. But yeah, like, they really needed to work on the vocal direction. There's just a lot of like awkwardness, and it just ruins those scenes, honestly. And it's like, what a shame. What a shame indeed. What happened? Or like maybe the technical hurdles were impossible to overcome, like matching the timing. So it just sucks. And I hate having to point it out, but like you guys clearly could see what happens. I mean, some of you were laughing on chat when certain scenes happen. I'm like, oh no, this dramatic scene is ruined. So yeah, I think that's about all I can really say for sound. Like basically, some good, like the music, but some bad, which is like some of the vocal direction. I mean, the later scenes are a little bit better than others, so I guess maybe it's just, I can't say it's all bad, but it's like, oh, it's too bad. Excuse me. So we're going to finally go to the gameplay section. So, I mean, I usually talk about controls and like how the game controlled and everything. Oh yeah, what is this? I know. Yeah, that was just like, why is this house? Why are the lines so cheesy? It shouldn't be. I mean, like, Kudelka wasn't great, but at least Shadow Hearts 1 was like a step in the right direction. Had really great direction. I was actually I really liked the voice work in Shadow Hearts 1, so you can see how I'm kind of disappointed by this game in particular. What was I gonna say? Okay, so now we're in gameplay. So this is usually where I talk about like the battle systems and other things or camera control. All right, so as I was saying, like the camera controls are kind of you can't really control it, so it just kind of snaps and it's really jarring, and I don't like it very much. It's actually like it's fortunate that I don't get motion sick, but I'm like thinking if I were another person, I might actually feel kind of uneasy seeing like such abrupt camera transitions. The other thing is like, okay, so the mini map is a good idea. I'm glad they incorporated it in this game compared to the previous game. But the problem is you can't zoom out or zoom in, so you're just like, oh, you can only see the mini map, and sometimes the dungeons are so huge, they're so big that those passages all start looking the same, so you just get really lost, and then the mini map is completely useless. It's only just to tell you, oh, you can go left and right, but they don't give you a chance like to go in like a Zelda kind of thing where you can pause the game, look at the map of the dungeon you're in, and then figure out what to do. Because, like, if you explored somewhere already, you should be able to keep track of it. And I just don't understand why you just, like, lowered the... Excuse me, sorry about that. You lowered the usefulness of your minimap that you painstakingly implemented. So it's just like, oh, you can get so lost in this game sometimes. And it's like the map is, like, not helpful, so you just waste your time, and your player feels like they wasted their time. And that's not what you want. I will say, though, that the battle system is actually really fun. I'm actually really, like, I really like it a lot. Like, I like the fact that it requires you to have reflexes, so you're not, like, falling asleep during a turn-based battle. But, like, but the other thing is that, oh yeah, and I like how there's so much customization. So like that's probably the best part of the gameplay is actually doing the battles, because like you're always like, I need to optimize, and you have to like really concentrate. So that's really fun, and there's a lot of battle customizations you can do. You obviously, Neville Frankie knows all about that stuff, and there are so much things you can do to maximize your damage. So that's really cool, and I'm actually I think the battle system is the highlight of the game for sure, for like gameplay wise. I think like the controls are certainly fine. I never had any problems with the controls, so that's good. There's no stupid platforming, and like they did a pretty good job of like showing, oh hey, if a question mark shows up, you can interact with it. Thank you, programmers. Like that way I'm not just mashing like stupidly. I'm not mashing like X stupidly and trying to find something. I can actually just walk near somewhere and then press X to interact with it, and that's pretty good. So good job trying to cut down the amount of information the player has to parse to figure out whether or not an item's on the ground. Let's see, anything else about the gameplay? So yeah, controls work pretty well, and oh, excuse me. I think I had something. I'm trying to remember what I was gonna say, but yeah. Yeah, I think I covered like, yeah, camera. The menus are fine. The menus are like, it does suck that there's a second page and you could accidentally not know about it. That is kind of silly. So the UI menus are a little bit like, couldn't you guys have let us like scroll down like in just one page instead of changing it? Like, come on, use a scroll view if you can then. So what I mean by a scroll view is like you can scroll the options and it just like scrolls up as you go down. That would have been nice. But alas, no, they put it on the second page. I guess it would have probably easier to program. But still, come on. And in terms of like, other than that, like, yeah, battle controls are fine. They're good enough. They're good for for the system they're in. I don't think I have anything else bad to say about it. I mean, it's fine. It works, so that's good. Yeah, anything else? Oh, and one thing is like interesting about the gameplay. It's not really a bad thing or a good thing, but like, I mean, for some people it might be bad, for some people it might be good. Like, I feel like the game as a whole is actually easier. So, excuse me, the tuning has been is kind of on the easy side, which is actually nice. I mean, like, I was actually surprised. I'm like, huh, the bosses, like, at some point were, like, not giving me that much trouble. So I was like, oh, that's pretty nice of them. And so you're given the leeway to get through the bosses, so you're not just like spending an hour on the boss fight, which is not very fun. Let's see, what was I gonna say again? And like you have like the, and like you're actually given a really generous amount of money. I was like really surprised. I'm like, wow, I'm in the end game and like I have access to the most expensive items, and yet I'm not running out of cash. I'm like, wow, that's really lenient. So yeah, this game is just lenient compared to Shadow Hearts 1. So I mean, some people might think, oh, that's a bad thing because it makes games too easy. But I mean, for other people, like, oh, that's great. So that means like I can play the game without worrying way too much about like resource management. And like, yeah, it can get a little bit overwhelming. There are a lot of systems and the law of optimization for planning. You have the whole crest, put the crest together. You have finding stuff. I guess putting the crest together, the crest is like the only on that like little like not like Solomon's key is like, I guess that's the most complicated part of it. Anything else I have to say about it? I mean, yeah, the bosses weren't too bad. There's actually quite a lot of side quests, so that's kind of neat if you're like one of those people who really likes to have extra stuff around the story. So they did a good job of incentivizing you to find out more about your friends through their side quests, and that's kind of nice. What else do I wanted to say? Yeah, battle system's fine. Controls are good. No stupid platforming. No tower. Anyway, I'm just thinking about another game, and we won't talk about that one. Yeah, I guess it's like, I guess for the most part, like, if you're like out, not really worrying about the story, then you're just playing the game. It's actually pretty good. It's like, it controls well, and the battle system is a lot of fun actually. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to like, well, like the conclusion, or like whether I recommend this game. And so usually I have it like thumbs up red, thumbs down period. So like, after thinking about it, I think I could give it a, like, I still think it's very much worth playing. I would say it's a long enough game that you probably can't do it just by borrowing it for sure. So I'll give it a thumbs up. You know what? I really like this game. I think it's worth keeping in like for yourself. Like, it may be a thumbs up rent from some people where like I think the game is good. I do recommend that I give that rating with a caveat that you must play Shadow Hearts 1, otherwise you won't understand what's going on in the game, and you're not gonna get the maximum. Sorry if I said too much while you're thinking about IGN. No, I hate numbers. I hate number review systems. They're very ill. They're not helpful. Like, the point, like, most people only care, like, is it worth my time to play? I think for most, if you're like an RPG gamer, absolutely. And like, I do recommend playing the Shadow Hearts 1 first before you play this game. But if you have played Shadow Hearts 1, you'll definitely enjoy this game. In spite of all like the negative things I've said about it, I still thought it was a positive experience. And I really like think it's worth playing. And it, like, I mean, clearly like it has a lot of fans, so like, even though we know that no game is truly like perfect, or no game can ever be not flawed, but in spite of everything, it's still worth playing for sure. And I think it's actually like, I actually recommend it to most like people who are RPG fanatics, or like people who like RPGs. For people who don't like RPGs, it may be for less inclined to play Japanese RPGs, maybe it'd be a thumbs up rent, as in like, I think it's good, but you should definitely like borrow it and give it a try, see how you like it. And I mean, like, yeah, that's a pretty solid rating for the game, right? I mean, like, I really did enjoy it, and like, there were some frustrating things, but it was never like so much that I wanted to throw the game, or like I dreaded playing the game. Like I actually was excited to come back home and play the game and learn more about the story, or like get through some challenges. And I'm glad, like, yeah, the other thing I also forgot to mention, like, the dungeons are not absolutely dreadfully long. That is one nice thing about the game I've noticed. Like, you can complete most dungeons like at maximum like an hour. I'm actually really happy that the pacing was, from the gameplay standpoint, was good. So yeah, props to them. So I would say that, yeah, thumbs up for for RPG gamers, and maybe a thumbs up red for like everybody else who are like newer to the genre. And I also recommend, do not play this game first. Play Shadow Hearts 1 at least. You could play Kudelka if you'd like. It's good background information, but it's not absolutely necessary. I feel it's not absolutely necessary. But yeah, I mean, compared to, like, the dungeons are mercifully short, and so like it's actually really good. You'll have a good experience. You're challenged, but not too challenged, and I think that's the best way to put it. You can obviously make the game harder for yourself, but you don't have to. And like, the game gives you the tools to deal with it, and like the pacing is very, very, very nice. It's just nice. Even without side quests, you can still get a lot of like mileage. And yeah, let's not talk about Xenogears dungeons. Oh jeez, that's one of the weaknesses of that game in particular. Yeah, it's not required. Kudelka's nice background information, and it will give you extra context for a certain things that happened in Shadow Hearts 1, but yeah, you don't absolutely need it. I do think, like, so yeah, that's the prerequisite for playing this game. So the review comes with that caveat that you must play Shadow Hearts 1, or else you will be very lost, and it's not you won't have the maximum enjoyment you could have. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's, let me think, is there anything else I want to say? So yeah, definitely, oh yes, I need to talk about the distribution. So yeah, I mean, I also have to make a caveat about this game, is that it is not available on modern consoles. That is one difficult part. So I understand that for most of everybody who was playing the game, like who wants to play the game, you will have to probably either obtain a PlayStation 2, like I have this on the this game. I played it entirely on the real PlayStation 2, so I had a lot, like, I didn't have any like emulator problems, but emulators are great nowadays, so you should be able to play this game entirely on emulation. Dirty word, I know. How you get the game is entirely up to you. I will not be giving you instructions through the stream here. But yeah, you can definitely find a way to. That's probably your only way of playing on like a modern system, because it is sadly not available on any PlayStation Store digitally. So it's unfortunate. I think the game's development team, there's some legal stuff with Aruze, who does not publish console games anymore, so I don't know if it will ever come out digitally. And it's really sad that this game and the other games in the series are not easily accessible via on modern digital storefronts. So sorry guys, you may have to settle for emulation, or you could get a PS2, which as of this stream are still not super expensive, and there are ways to obtain the game, or you could buy it on eBay. They're still affordable, so as of right now, but I mean, you never know. So yeah, thank you. So yeah, that's about it. I hope you guys will play the game if you have not played it already, and I hope you guys will play the rest of the series too.